Meet sailing yacht Avanti and her crew, Gerard and Jacqueline. We left Cape Town in December 2021 on our floating home, heading west on an adventure of a lifetime around the world.
We've been in Fiji for just over a month now, and it's time to continue our journey. Once the officials come to the marina to clear you out, you have to leave within an hour or two, and they only come around 10 in the morning, so normally we would have been waiting in the marina till the wind was right, but in this case we can't. The Fijians at Vanuatu Marina tie a blessing to Avanti and sing us a farewell song before we leave. It was so heartfelt that it made Jackie a little bit emotional.
The time has come, it's time to leave Fiji, and it's looking wet and wild out there. We're a bit nervous.
The wind is going to be a little bit on the nose, but it should turn tonight, so we hope it looks a bit better. But yeah, it's time to leave. The passage to Vanuatu's Tana island is just under 500 nautical miles, so we should be able to do it in about 3.5 days.
So for a change of pace, we're trying to go as slow as possible because we have the wind and the swell on the nose. We don't want to go outside the Fiji reef before the wind turns a bit. So we're hoping to go just over 2 knots for the next couple of hours, and then late afternoon the wind direction should change, and then the swell should change direction a little bit, and it should be more comfortable once we're outside the reef. But we're trying to slow Avanti down with an upwind sail.
The first part of the passage was straight into the wind, but we could at least sail inside Fiji's barrier reef, which makes the swell much less. We start sailing with 2 reefs in the main and a reef Genoa, but a sudden drop in the wind and a shift in direction forces us to take down the Genoa. A few minutes later we have to start the engine until the wind fills in again.
We should be having 20 knots on the nose, and now we have only a few knots from right behind. Predictions in the Pacific are so wrong almost all the time. We've just finished dinner and washed up, and the sun has just set, so normally I would go to bed, but tonight is a tricky one as we try and find an exit through the pass. Now if you look where we are at the moment on the screen, you can see we're the little red ship. Now normally you can see the dark blue and the light blue, and if there's a little reef coming up or something funny coming on, you can clearly see the little reefs indicated like this. But where we're traveling at the moment, there's cloudiness over the screen, so we need to exit through the reefs over here, and it's very cloudy, we can't really see the reefs. On Navionics it shows there's a few low spots, but Navionics is very wrong in this area. We've seen how inaccurate Navionics is, so this is a little scary to navigate through at night, so we're both on watch until we get through this.
First night on the passage to Vanuatu was not great. We did expect wind from on the nose, but the wind direction was actually not bad. It's been on the beam most of the time, but it gusts and it goes from 15 to 28 knots. So we've got 3 reefs in the main that we put in, I don't know, 2 o'clock in this morning when it went up to 30 knots.
and the swell is really bad. It's really short period, and it's on our beam as well. So you can't really see it on the video, but it's really uncomfortable. I didn't sleep at all. I think Jackie managed 1 or 2 hours, but yeah, we really hope the swell, the sea state improves, and the wind is supposed to turn a little bit and die down, so hopefully that happens soon.
With the short period swell on the beam, the boat gets drenched by seawater, and we get loads of sea spray into the cockpit. We sail on a beam reach with a heavily reefed Genoa and 3 reefs in the main.
Cooking in this weather is near impossible, but luckily I pre-cooked, so Gerard's just inside heating our lentil and rice dinner. At least we're well fed in this crazy swell.
As we get closer to Tana Island, we have to slow down to avoid a night entry into the port, so we drop the main completely to reduce the speed by a few knots.
We're about 75 miles from Tanna Island, which is the island we'll call in Vanuatu. The weather's really settled down. The first night was obviously not nice. The swell has really settled down. It's less than a meter now. It's really just wind swell. And we had to slow down so that we arrive on Tuesday morning rather than coming in there at night. So we just have the Genoa out, and it's not even full out. It's quite a bit reefed. So we're doing about 4 knots, and we'll keep on doing that until tomorrow morning. We can see the first island in the distance, so we're almost in Vanuatu.
We welcome a bit of a rainstorm just before we enter Port Resolution to wash off most of the salt that has accumulated on Avanti over the last few days.
Cold and wet morning, but at least last night on the way to Tana Island we could see the volcano spewing red, so it'll be very exciting to see the volcano up close. But for now it's cold and wet. It's just after 7 AM, so we're slowly creeping closer, hoping that the clouds will lift and maybe have some sunshine guiding us into the small port. We've arrived in Port Resolution. Now to clear in here is a bit tricky because it's not actually a port of entry. So I think about a week before we left, we sent an email to the authorities and the different officers and asked for permission to anchor here first, which we got luckily. And now when we arrived, we called on the VHF. They said call on 16, but nobody's answering. So I guess we'll just wait until someone comes or calls us on the radio. They did say stay on the boat until you're cleared in.
When we arrived early in the morning, there was just 2 other boats on anchor, but the bay quickly filled up with about 10 more boats arriving from Fiji that must have been just behind us. Customs arrived at around midday and called all the boats on the VHF radio that needed to be cleared in to the Port Resolution Yacht Club.
So after day 1 in Port Resolution, we've managed to clear with customs. We had to borrow some local Vanuatu from another cruiser because we don't have local currency. But customs is all sorted and immigration is only coming tomorrow. So only after tomorrow we'll be officially in Vanuatu.
The next morning we get a call from the immigration officers to come ashore and to complete the formalities.
So we've cleared in, and unfortunately we still don't have Vanuatu. So Gerard's actually been taken by immigration to Lanarkle, where he'll withdraw some money, pay all the officers we owe money to, and then he'll come back, maybe by taxi. The chief of the village we're in says he doesn't really know if Gerard's coming back, but at least I have a Vanti, right? The reason I didn't go with is to go to Lanarkle or back, they charge per person, which is a little bit expensive, more expensive than we'd normally pay for a taxi. So we're just sending Gerard on his own, and I'm wandering the village with our friends, and they'll help me launch, blast, or be later to get back to Avanti.
The village is really rustic and basic. There are absolutely no shops. The locals have to travel to Lanarkle to get any form of supplies, which is a 4-hour return trip on the back of a pickup. The ride to Lanarkle on the back of immigration's pickup is very bumpy, but it takes us past Mount Yasur and over the ash plains generated by the volcanic eruptions. It really looks like you are driving on the lunar surface. We also had to cross a river that has carved through the ash layers of the volcano over the years. A pretty spectacular sight, and it really makes me excited to visit the crater of this active volcano, the reason for our visit to Tana Island.
Thank you for joining us this week. Next week we finally see the volcano that has been continuously erupting for decades. Please leave us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this week's episode, or click to subscribe. Thank you to our Patreons who send us a contribution every month for these videos. You can join them by clicking on the link in the description below. See you next week.